How's it going, people? Let's make this video fast and before my computer just got freeze again. And today lesson we are going to continue with our Linux Devops course, and we are going to dive into basic commands. Yeah, it's funny or interesting or curious because we are talking about commands at this level, so advanced. But yeah, I think it's never is late to to learn some basic and fundamentals. And today lesson we are going to cover maybe how commands and programs work, and in after videos we are going to cover other interesting tools like maybe just movement, create, delete, folders, file, etc. We are going to start with something basic, and remember that once we talk about CLI, it stands for Command Line Interface. Command Line Interface. This name is not just for fun. Command Line Interface means that we have just one way to interact with the system. Remember that once we are using Linux as a Devops tool, we are not longer be available, or maybe in the fact use GUI or graphic user interface that is pretty different than command line interface, UI user interface. The main difference between these two different ways, because at the end we are talking about interface, maybe is the way we use the way we use to interact with the system. The most basic and the way that exists since the beginning of computer systems are command line interface, and it's about just text or plain text, as you can see, like a terminal. But this is a little tricky because I am using a graphic user interface, because as you can see I have different tools that I can use to interact with the system, not just plain text. So my computer itself is not a command line interface, it's a graphic user interface powered by, I don't remember. I think I have all my system data just right there. Let me see. It's a system powered by, well, I am using Fedora, but the idea is talk about, well, maybe using Genome, but Genome works below or in a certain way Wayland, but also I use something called graphic server that allows me just interact with my system in this way. If I remove all my visual or UI tools, my Fedora turns out like a old machine, or maybe like the servers work at these days. And I think it's important to understand the difference between command line interface and graphic user interface, is because once we work on top of any kind of server, we used to work in that way, just plain text. Maybe we can install a graphic user interface inside a server, but depends on the resource that we want to use for that. Remember that we are talking about productive environment, and it's pretty important use the 100% of the resource machine in useful task, instead just maybe trying to improve the DevOps user experience, because at the beginning or at the main point, the DevOps guy has to know how to work in a command line interface. So yeah, it's not recommend install a UI in a server. So that's the reason why we use command line interface those days, because yeah, CLI is something that just came up from the beginning, but we still using this way to use the system because it's more optimized, we spend less resource and more. After that, in a terminal we have commands, but commands are the same thing than apps, applications, programs, etc., because we are talking about the same thing, a piece of software that makes something that works for one reason. So, for example, the first command that maybe is the most basic that all you guys learn once we start in this stuff is ls. ls allows to see the system the current files in the folder, but in the folder depends on where we are. Because yeah, in terminal we have a specific site. It's not like something global, because if I just close this terminal, yeah, I am on my desktop. But what does that mean? Because yeah, I can perform some activities maybe you don't see, but I am able to see my application docs, and maybe I don't know, just click on top of this tool just right there about software and be able to interact with the software, and that's it. Yeah, we already execute a process to interact in this way, but it's a different paradigm. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Give me a moment. You guys listen to this. Paradigm, or something like that.
Paradigm.
Of course, yeah, we are talking about paradigm. That yeah just defines the way that we do something in this way. In that words, or in that meaning, is the way we interact with the system. So once we are using a terminal, well, we have a specific location, and that location give us the second command, and that's it. PWD. PWD stands for print working directory. So that allows me to know where I am, where I am, where I am, where I'm, where am I, where I am. Yeah, where am I? Where I? Oh my goodness, where I am. And of course, this maybe change everything, because if you want to open a certain process, you have to go to a specific location to execute that file. Or if you want to create a file in a specific location, you have to go to that location, or maybe modify some files. Yeah, of course. Maybe there are other fundamentals like relative paths and absolute paths, but we are going to cover that in other episode. But this is important because we are going to perform actions that will affect our system, and we have to understand where we are to execute that operations. For this video, I create a folder called temp. In this one, yeah, we have to change, and thanks to that, we see the tier command of this video, and that's it. CD stands for change directory, and that allows to travel to different directories through the whole system. In this way, I just go to documents. After that, borrar, that's just delete in Spanish, and the last one was just temp. All these are folders, each one inside of the other, and that means that the documents is inside of the Chris folder. This is a folder. This is not a user. It's not a executable. It's just a folder. So in that way, we are going to execute a program, a basic program like htop. Maybe this command is a pretty advanced at all because you have to install, and depending your distribution, you have to perform a different command. For example, in my case, I have to use this one to install htop, and that's allow me go to the official repositories from Fedora and get it or bring it up from me to me. But for example, if you are using Debian, you have to use sudo apt install htop. Maybe if you are using some Arch Linux based distribution, you need sudo pacman s, if I'm not wrong, htop, and that's it. So as you can see, I just need to write a specific word and something magically happen and I see the program. This program is a pretty advanced because use different approach in the CLI tools to make a better interface. For example, allows me to update the information. Is not just plain text, so give it something or a UI animate, bring to life UI. And also I can use my cursor. As you can see, I'm using the scroll, moving through all the system process. That is pretty interesting. But maybe in a server is not pretty common because in a server hardly ever you see a mouse that you can use to interact with the system because you are using a command line interface, and almost all command line interface doesn't use, or the servers itself doesn't use hardware like a cursor. But what does mean? In this video, I want to cover htop background. I'm going to tell you how is this possible. How is possible that I'm just using htop and execute something like the system already know what I'm talking about. Well, this is not magic. Instead, we use something similar to a official registry that is maybe a shortcut that our system understand when we are talking about certain words pattern. In my case, my system knows what is htop because htop is already configured. Where or how is configured? Maybe where answer the whole answer, the whole question, because we are going to cover the fourth command during this video, and that's it, which allows to know where it's the binary from an application, maybe the app itself. So in my case, I'm going to pass as argument htop. And as you can see, the root, or the main root from, or where is htop locate is this one, user usr /bin /htop. If you ask about this, the user is means or stand for the user. Maybe it's a command that is not used at all by the system and instead is used by the users. Maybe it has something shared because you can create different users. In this case, you are using this one. The second folder is bin. Bin stands for binary. Binary is another way to refer to something that can be executed, like a program. And the last one, this is not a folder. This is the executable or the binary itself, and it's about htop. So that's mean if we try to open that application using their their official or maybe original path, we can use that. So in my case, I can use user bin htop, and as you can see, we have the same result, because once we execute htop, we are executing maybe something like that, but it's like a shortcut, but that shortcut is called like path or the environment variables in a system. So we can see that maybe just using echo and path, and that path allows to maybe execute maybe some, how can I say this, some apps without the whole path. As you can see, we have user local bin, but also we have other like sbin, or we have just right there user bin. But as you can see, I also have some tools like Linux Brew, Cargo, and Flutter. For example, I can execute this one for this tool, and in my case, this doesn't recognize the command because I am not an environment or a developer environment, but depends, because I can use Cargo itself, and we have this. But it's not why Cargo is inside binary, is because we add this one. So for example, if I use which Cargo, we see that we are not longer inside user bin. We are using the home path from chris.cargo/bin/cargo. So I can use that. For example, if I use this, that in following episode we are going to cover what does this mean, we can access to the specific binary and execute the tool itself. So I hope this video was helpful. We are just cover the basics and understand how can move through the terminal and understand how the terminal works itself. In this episode, we cover the most basic commands that we can cover in a commands Linux video. In the following videos, we are going to cover all more commands, but also we tend or dive into the commands, how the command works, why the system recognize some commands, and the others we have to specify hold the path. So I hope this video was helpful, and see you in the next time. Bye bye.